So I think it's a great day. We had a wonderful day and a half here with lots of folks here, and just any initial thoughts here.
Sure. First off, I guess we have the answer to my first question. Is this mic working? Okay, good. So I suppose the first thought that I have at the end of this is how gratifying it is to have been able to work through a process that allowed us to put these ideas in front of this group. That is to say, when I was working on getting to know incubators around the country, and I'm talking about traditional incubators, not Y Combinators, not other
Techstars, yeah.
Techstars, but traditional ones, ones that are run by economic development councils in a town or associated with the university, et cetera. I didn't realize what I was missing out on until I started to discover what it is that's happening in this movement. It started at Maker Faire when I first came across the ideas, as I discovered that these things consistently existing in maker spaces and hacker spaces. It distills out to this open hardware is such an important enabler for folks. The fact that we can now collaborate is such a fantastic source of tapping into other people's ideas and bringing a lot of different skill sets together and accomplishing things that wouldn't normally have been done. I mean, hardware innovating is possible, and you can build this stuff with all of this different personal fabrication technology we have. And to be able to put this into a program that will go out to a corporate audience is just really gratifying. Because I spent, as I said earlier today, 25 years in corporate, and it takes a long time for anything to penetrate. We're slow to embrace a lot of these things, and yet there's speed, there's agility, there's cost reduction. There's so much that can come from embracing these ideas. And for us to have been able to present this to you folks and to have so many great presenters talk to these things from their perspective is just really gratifying. So it's been an agenda I'm really proud of, and it seems to have resonated with you folks in that we had such great conversations. We had to have people up front here keeping people from going on because it's such a great topic. Everybody wanted to talk about it more. Everybody wanted to extend the ideas because it's an exciting space. And it seems to me that it's kind of just at the beginning of things. So I'm really pleased the way this all went.
Okay, Tim?
Yeah. I've got my own
okay, great.
here. I think, is it close enough? You know, back in 1998, I organized this thing that came to be called the Open Source Summit because it was where we brought together this group of people who were working on this new thing. You know, it had been called free software, but there were a lot of people who were left out of the discussion. And what we accomplished on that day was to get everybody to see the connection between, it wasn't just the Free Software Foundation and Linux, but oh my God, all this internet stuff too was done as free software. And I think this day is going to be remembered in a similar way, as a day when people started to recognize something important. You know, I look at this, you know, we've had, you know, this incredible maker movement, which Dale named and helped us sort of cheerlead, starting with the launch of Make Magazine in 2005. But I think today is the day when everybody realizes that this is an entrepreneurial movement and that this is really a revolution. And I've just seen, first of all, it's so wonderful. It's this incredible combination of entrepreneurial fervor and community here. And it's a really memorable I think it's a memorable day for us. It's been the most exciting conference that I've been at in a long time. And I put on, I think, pretty good conferences. But this is, you know, this is an awesome, you know, view into a world that's just exploding.
That's great. Thank you, Tim. Well, let's open it up. I just really wanted to kind of field some ideas, and being a workshop is really trying to get your ideas about what you've seen and what you're thinking about. Andrew?
Hi. I just wanted to comment that I think the only missing component was marketing, because a lot of great ideas, a lot of ideas when they're developed, the enemy of them is usually communication to the consumer. So one of the things, and you know, Kickstarter is like great because a lot of people see an idea and they get to vote with it. But you know, getting to that next level, I mean, we saw the manufacturing, the marketing, the incubator. So having some more on the marketing side and how do you achieve consumer awareness or your end consumer awareness, I think is an important component too.
Okay. Good.
I think in general, as we go forward with events like this, it will become increasingly how-to, with practical tutorial information about how you do all these things that we're talking about.
Yeah, and if I could also comment that one of the things that we do in your traditional incubators is you provide the space, you provide some expertise, you have some overall management for the space, you provide some resources. That's something that as I go to makerspaces and I see great product ideas, people have no ability to take it beyond that great product idea. And marketing is one dimension, but if you were in an incubator, you'd have access to, perhaps let's say it's an incubator that's based in a chamber of commerce. You'd have access to the business community there. You could find people who could help you with marketing. You could have people to help you with your books and those kinds of things. And one of the thoughts that we've had is that those kinds of resources need to become available to makers. There's this gap that we see some brilliant ideas peppered throughout the landscape, and they hit a wall. There's only so much they can do. They're pursuing a passion, and they can't necessarily, under their own volition, take it to the next level. But there's nobody there that they can turn to. And they're not all going to go and apply to really impressive programs and get funding and all that sort of thing. They want to be able to take it to the next level, and there's no infrastructure around for a makerspace idea and a makerspace product developer to actually go somewhere with it.
But I think that's going to come. I mean, if we'd had this conversation about the web in 1993, you could have said the same thing. I mean, Dale and I ran the first ever study on the possibility of advertising on the World Wide Web. We had to, and believe it or not, we had to do telephone surveys because none of the marketing infrastructure was there, and it grew up. And I think a lot of that's going to happen in this space too. We are in the early stages of something that is being recognized, and as it takes off, you start to build the infrastructure. I mean, we compared how hard it was to launch GNN, which was the first web portal, with how easy it was to launch our publishing business. Because there was an existing ecosystem, and we just got sucked into it. And with online, we all had to make it from scratch. And I think, in some ways, that's what's happening here.
Yeah. The other thing I want to say is from a marketing point of view, you actually heard from just some phenomenal marketers like Phil Terone. I mean, there's a lot of non-traditional marketing, and Brie Pettis is a phenomenal marketer. I mean, it's just part of it, Aya Badir, it's putting the face on the product and getting out there. I think there's a lot of Kickstarter, non-traditional marketing vehicle, right? It's using some of those tools effectively, and it sort of gets to...
It's actually kind of interesting because, you look at the news stories lately about sort of click-through on social advertising on Facebook. It's all big news. Well, Kickstarter has clearly hit the ball out of the park on social advertising. They've built a business model that's around social advertising. So it's sort of interesting. We're just in the beginning of some of the ways that all this is going to work.
Yeah. Hey, Owen? Mike.
So I hope this follows on the just now discussion and sort of a mega trend observation to add to Dale's characterization of what makes a maker, in that I have a miseducation as a physicist, or as I like to call it, reductionist science. And I think what we're seeing now is a real swing back to integrative approaches and interdisciplinary abilities. And I think hardware, for example, is a forcing function, and entrepreneurship are forcing functions that force you to integrate across a lot of different disciplines. So what's wrong with our education system that doesn't create those skills at the root level?
Yeah. No, I'll take that as a rhetorical question because we could go on for a long time about that. Owen?
I just want to quickly echo what Tim has said, and what's exciting to me in this room, because over the last 4 years, I think I've mentioned to you, Dale, that we've been slowly trying to build the application flow that we have around physical technology companies, and it feels different right now. So it does feel exactly like 94, 95 when the open source software movement was kind of coming into its own and starting to build the infrastructure, and the tinkerers were becoming entrepreneurs. And so I think it's really exciting. and I'm looking forward. We actually have an application process right now, so I'm looking forward to folks who are looking to build businesses and seeing what comes of it, because this time it's actually real and physical and not just out in the cloud. So it's very exciting.
Okay, good.
And you talk about how it feels like 94, 95. For those of you old enough in this room to remember 1977, 78, 79,
Yeah.
does it feel like that?
Yeah.
Absolutely. It's remarkable, the similarities.
Yeah.
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 And just a little aside on that, just remember, in each of those things, most companies, most entrepreneurs failed. And that's okay, because, you know, something amazing got built. And a lot of people have to try to make a revolution. And it's just great to be part of it.
Yeah.
But, you know, the other side of it, I think what we've been kind of good at is seeing it when it's really small. And you know, Tim and I together sort of brought Web 2.0 as an idea out there. And, you know, actually the formative idea was running into Etsy in its early days and seeing that there was 3 people. They were going to work without any money or any investment to build something on the size of eBay. You know, and they believed that was possible because there was work there. There were layers that they could build on. They weren't trying to build everything. They were trying to build on top of a stack that existed. But it really suggests to me that the web was the platform and that a new group of developers were to come at that, you know, with fresh eyes and new ideas. And, you know, it really did, in addition to the early 90s, it sort of in the, you know, early part of 2000s was, you know, another big climb. Yeah.
Yeah.
I actually think part of it is this community keeps reinventing itself and they move around, but the core of it is kind of the really interesting spot. Where do we have? Right there.
This is my first time being here, but there's one question. And it's like nobody asked this question, but I would ask, maybe it's obvious to you. We are talking about open hardware. And it's okay for simple stuff, you know, it doesn't have an IP, or if I have a box that has complex chips there, there's an IP there. And I was talking to Andrew, the bunny, yesterday, that he said, I told him I have this great box, connect things, now you can do a great application. He said, I have to give me a data sheet. I said, okay. That's IP, you know, the data sheet that most chip maker will not give it to you. So either you accept API, you know, driver level, you know, you do things with you on the higher level, or you may not have a great box. So how do people, you know, solve that problem?
Well, first off, I would just say that every open technology also has closed elements, and it's never all one or the other. I mean, think about it. You know, the open architecture of the PC, you know, kicked off this explosion in personal computing. But you had Intel inside, and you had Microsoft ending up with a monopoly position as well. But there was still this huge explosion of openness from that original PC architecture. Similarly, you know, the internet took off, but guess what? It had Cisco inside. You know, proprietary routers. And so all these open layers, but some proprietary pieces. And I don't think that, you know, we're talking about some future in which everything is open source. It's more that open source, first of all, is an incredible way to kickstart a new market. Because, by the way, I'm using the term kickstart in the original sense. Yeah. But you know, you get an explosion of innovation there, but you do find that companies find some way to have a competitive advantage. Sometimes, you know, lately the whole evolution out of open source on the web was people getting that their proprietary advantage was network effects in data, for example, which was an unexpected new way of getting a kind of lock-in. But I don't think that it's necessarily either or. You have to, but I think you do have to have the openness, particularly in a new market, because it's what gets enough innovation going for us to get to critical mass and to find the things that are really going to take off.
Okay, over there. Who is it, Michael?
Yeah, hi. So I have a electrical engineering background, and then I moved into software. Now I've recently, well, past 5 years or so, found my true calling in education. So as a former software engineer, I'm delighted to have been through the open source software movement and benefited from so many of the open source software projects and been involved at the open source software conference. And then moved on to, well, I did hardware early actually, then benefited from the open hardware movement and have thrilled to have been part of the open hardware, open source hardware, I forget the name of the conference. And as an educator now, I'm looking to see what will be the next conference that you folks create that will be the open source teaching, education conference. And maybe the most important aspect of that in the context of this meeting right here is I think most people here will agree that education is something that's perhaps one of the most important things that we do. And as we all know, it's funded extremely poorly. So where are the entrepreneurs that will figure out ways for educators, and I'm not just talking about some small fraction of them, but really the ones who have to deal with public schools and the masses of our children. What will the entrepreneurs be doing for those people in the future that will allow them to be compensated in the way that maybe their importance is appropriate to their level of importance?
Yeah.
Can I say one thing real quickly? I know Dale, education is Dale's passion, but I just want to throw out one thing. Every system ends up with a lot of cruft, and the education system is no exception. You know, when you think about the amount of money that's spent on textbooks that are kind of locked in, there's a kind of a tax there on the system, you know, with all kinds of people who are kind of got the system at their beck and call. And I was really struck by in Dale's recent interview with Radio Shack, you know, where they were talking about building maker spaces in schools, and the question was, well, what kind of equipment should you get? And everybody, you know, kind of imagines, oh, we need the big, expensive, you know, just like they did, they wanted to have computers in the schools, and it's like, no, get as little as possible, you know, and invest in people and projects. There's plenty to do. Dale said, you know, start with screwdrivers and, you know, and, you know, just real basic stuff and work your way up. You know, I do think there's a lot more potential in education to do less with more.
I have to give you a funny answer. I asked my daughter the same question, and her first reply was, well, science classes should all be held outdoors. That way you can burn stuff and blow stuff up.
I think that's totally right on. And I say my grandfather and my great-grandfather and my great-grandfather before were all school teachers in this little school in Ireland. And when I was back there a few weeks ago, I came across this picture of, you know, my great-grandfather with like 50 kids that he was teaching, all barefoot, sitting on a wall in Ireland. And, you know, it's like, my gosh, you know, people are what drives education.
You know, I'll just have a quick answer on that, but it's, I'll try to block. It's probably my Twitter stream if it isn't. But a guy, Tom Van Dark, is one of the, I think, originally Gates Foundation education lead, but he's out in educational philanthropy. And he wrote a piece, really unexpected this week, is Why Isn't School Like Maker Faire? And,
nice.
You know, and it really sort of got onto this idea of, like, he said the biggest problem in school is boredom, you know, and when you look around the room and you see all this exciting stuff going on, I mean, it's really getting kids into these communities and getting them to participate, not just observe, so that they are empowered to do this stuff. And just you saw those two young boys last night. I mean, they need the opportunity, but they also do need, as Tim said, they need the mentorship. They need people to help them. Those kids are brilliant, but behind them is a dad who's very engaged and other support in the community. It isn't just the tools themselves. So anyway, there's a lot we go on there, but we'll get over to Boz. Yes?
Hey, thank you for doing this. This is my first conference, and I know absolutely nothing about hardware, so this has been fantastic for me.
Thank you. Thank you for coming.
Something that's come up in most everyone's session is just the idea of Kickstarter and how sort of revolutionary it has been. And I think Pebble has really elevated Kickstarter to almost everybody that's interested in building something or learning about building something. And so I had two questions for you, if you're comfortable. One is, in thinking about Pebble, do you think that that is, an anomaly for Kickstarter, the beginning of a bubble, or really just the beginning for projects on Kickstarter? And following up to that question is, based on what you guys have seen, what do you feel are sort of the critical elements for a project that could be successful on Kickstarter? And what you've seen amongst the failures on Kickstarter are some of the big reasons why?
I'll go out on a limb and say I think it's just the beginning. I do think there are going to be some high-profile blow-ups on Kickstarter, projects that can get funded at a high level that don't work out. And what I'll just want to remind people when that happens is to just remember all the high-profile, VC companies that have blown up and failed as well. Not to mention companies that have gone public and blown up and failed. Failure is part of the innovation ecosystem. So, but with that being said, I think Kickstarter is an accelerating trend. It really is a great way of not just of crowdfunding, but it's of pre-selling products, of being able to put out ideas and have them, voted into existence by people who want them to exist. And I think it's really probably one of the most important signs of how the new economy can work. I'm very, very bullish on where that's going. In terms of the practical, I think, there's a couple of things that seem really important to me about Kickstarter. One, obviously, it's, marketing is baked in from the beginning. You have to tell a story that matters to someone, and it has to matter to real customers. And I think about that's a wonderful antidote to what is wrong with so much VC. You can be breathing your own exhaust. But when you have a company that's actually selling something to customers, like when Dale and I started publishing at O'Reilly, it's like we were selling to real customers, and if they didn't pay us, we didn't get paid. It wasn't like you go in a back room with somebody who gives you money, and then you kind of play with stuff for a couple, a while, and then you find out that nobody wanted it. Lean startup is right there baked into Kickstarter, because you have to figure out what people want right from the get-go. And so there's that. There's also a really great lesson on working your social network. The fact that you don't get, it's all or nothing. And of course that means that people have to be good about scoping what they really need to do what they're promising. Now on the downside, I think a lot of people, a number of people have referred to the Kickstarter hell. Your project was more popular than you expected, and you didn't really think through what it would take to deliver. But those are great learning experiences. I think we're going to have a great time.
Yeah, I'd say the same. I mean, almost I was thinking of your slide. You move from fun to this next stage, and if you're thinking it's just going to be fun to put something up on Kickstarter, and you get funded, you really, it comes down to how committed you are to really doing that. And there's a lot of stuff that's not very fun that you actually really a lot of time into.
That's right. Think back on our early book business when the books arrived, and it was all hands as we had to unload the truck, and put them into the basement.
Yeah. So what do we got?
Hi. Hi, my name is Gal, and I'm from Israel. I think I'm most probably one of the crazy guys in Israel that actually did a hardware startup. We're a few in the community there. And I'm really feeling honored to be with you here, and I'm saving this because it's going to be a momentum for the future. Like I was a part of this movement, and I got inside of it. And I think that following up on the marketing level, we should coin, there is the maker movement, and we should coin another term for the whole, I don't know, industrial 3.0 or something that will help bring everything from the newspapers, New York Times, people that don't really understand what we do here. When I speak with people in Israel and I tell them that I do a hardware startup, they look at me like, why aren't you doing it? Like, why not software? Why not web? And we need something to coin it and make it more visible. Like, there is a revolution starting, It started here, and if you want to get on board, come and join us. And it's called, I don't know, we had a few in Twitter, like Industrial 3.0 or whatever, crowd fabrication.
Yeah.
I like the maker movement.
But the maker is more hobbyist. It looks like more hobbyist, and we need on the business orientation or the.
Yeah, we'll see.
Like
I think the trouble, as many said in industrial, is, you know, one of the. I remember visiting some people, the National Association of Manufacturing, who are sort of complaining that kids aren't interested in manufacturing, and you know that kids are thinking that they're going to go work in a factory, and hey, like Travis, they didn't go into manufacturing after all that schooling. So you know, I said like. I think one of the things that making is doing is making it personal for kids. That you get to do this. It's just like having. It's like mainframes weren't that interesting, but personal computers were really fascinating. So that industrial name doesn't always get that personal side to me. The fact that you get to do it, you get to participate, even if it's not necessarily doing the business. But back to that laser printer example. I mean, you did get to print out your own, you know, brochure for your little club, and you know what, lots of little things add up there, and I think puts this together. But I mean, I struggled a bit for the name of this. Where I know Helen was asking me, is hardware the right name? And you know, and I mainly wanted to get across innovation, and I wanted to get across that we weren't talking about, as someone said, everybody's talking mobile social. So I didn't want to do that. I wanted to talk about something else. But we know maybe names come to us.
Hardware is mobile and social, it turns out.
It is. I liked Brad's idea of just software with plastic around it. That's a pretty good line. But that's kind of awkward conference title. Yes. Where are we with the mic? Oh, there we are. Greg.
So someone was commenting on Twitter how much I'm from NYU ITP and how much NYU ITP projects, as opposed to Stanford and a few other places, were shown this weekend. And one thing that I want to just mention that's really different about NYU ITP than those other places and than this room is that for the first time this year, ITP is majority women in the students, slightly over 50% women students. And that environment is actually, I think, a big part of what leads to that creativity. And I don't want to talk about like how people's natural tendencies, but something about having everyone in the boat makes a really big difference. And this room is not 50-50. And I just think, I don't know what we can do about that, but I think that's something really that goes hand in hand with that playful environment, that keeping it from being a kind of geek fest to some degree, or being inclusive, that really gives the life to this movement.
Right.
That would be great to see included in the future. So.
Well, that reminds me of Massimo's. Pardon me? Yeah. But I just remind Massimo's comment that, you know, Arduino came out of the design community. I think, you know, there's a really interesting thing happening here with, you know, stuff calls on a different kind of sensibility. And you're right, it is much more inclusive. Yeah. And by the way, I have to say, I would just give a shout out to Dale. I tell this story all the time, and he's probably sick of it, but I still think that you know, when I went to the first Maker Faire, and the fact that here are these two pavilions next to each other, and one is the Swaparama, you know, the clothing, you know, remanufactured clothing swap, and next to it is the Alameda Contra Costa Computer Recycling Society, you know, showing off their biodiesel-powered supercomputer made out of recycled PCs running Linux, and the fact that Dale, in his sort of amazing twisted head, said these things are part of the same movement. You know, what a stroke of genius that was, because I think it is this big tent that is, you know, part of what's so transformative here. We're bringing together people from all kinds of different areas, and we're making something new and unique happen.
Yeah, I agree. Where's next? Eric.
Hi, Dale. Thanks for having me out. Really appreciate it. My name is Eric Weddington, and I have kind of a couple of different hats coming out to this event. I'm the marketing manager for open source and community for Atmel. Atmel's the semiconductor company that makes all the chips on all the Arduinos. We know who you are. But what you may not know is that the other hat that I wear is the creator of WinAVR, which is an open source tool chain for the AVR that I started 10 years ago when I was at a different company, because we needed it for our own products, making embedded systems. So it was kind of neat to see all the work that I did, midnight, 1, 2 o'clock in the morning, my wife coming out, what are you working on? To see it now, 10 years later, being used in the Arduino community and all of these amazing, incredible projects that use the Arduino in so many different ways. It's terribly exciting. My wife, too, also has a degree in elementary education, but she never used it because she had some different ideas about how children should be taught, and the system wouldn't ever take her in as a teacher. So I share a lot of interests, intersections with you, Dale. So it's amazing. I was unsure about what to expect at this Hardware Innovation Summit. I was a little bit well, we'll see how it turns out, and I've been totally impressed. Please continue it. Amazing presentations. Thank you all very much, and I hope to talk to more of you later on tonight. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Hey, Jay, I saw you had your hand up. Did you want to get a last remark in? Right there. Yeah.
Thanks, Dale. That's kind. Real quick on this. I've been so motivated by so many heroes that I see around this room, new ones that I've met in the last 2 days, and also people that I've wanted to meet for such a long period of time. And a thought's occurred to me over the last month. Sebastopol is sort of this icon for what's going on as a place. And the Bay Area has a lot of capital and a history of a lot of businesses that have been built in the tech sector. And Detroit is hurting big time right now, but they have some amazing makers. And that's in the United States alone. And you have Hanover, Germany, you have a bunch of other places around the world. Japan, I can think of a ton of places where things are made. And a wise man named Bill Draper, who built a lot of what is here in Silicon Valley. He built Sutter Hill. His father built Draper Richards. His son is at Draper Fisher Jurvetson. He once said that Silicon Valley came about because of two things, Stanford and Berkeley, and a nice place to live in between. And so basically the entrepreneurs came out here and the capital followed them. And with the electricity that's in this room, there needs to be an ecosystem like Bunny talked about. And you know, that is what is perhaps missing for all of us to think about. I'm not saying that we all pick up our families and move at this time, but I think Lamore said it the best at the beginning. Is there a way to create a bubble that self-sustains? And it's not a bubble to keep people out. It's actually a bubble to grow and send up a lightning rod that says there are jobs to be had and there's innovation to be had. So maybe we'll all descend on Sebastopol, or maybe there's some long-term thinking that needs to come into what happens to places like Detroit and Los Angeles and that kind of thing. And I'm motivated to see everybody come together in the Bay Area, and maybe that's the place it'll happen. But I do know that there are many other places in the world where they're waiting for this movement to come, and I think it needs something the size of a bay to make it happen. And so I hope we can build that ecosystem, because it needs to happen.
Yeah, great.
Great thought.
Eric, did you want to come up here? And I think we're going to, that's a great thought to end on, but I saw Eric's hand go up, so we'll do one more and then we'll break.
Well, no, I almost wanted to build on that. I think it's interesting, you know, every one of these revolutions, and I think I've heard it said, and everyone's feeling like there's a revolution happening. It doesn't happen that often. We see a wave starting to break. And in fact, I think it's also expressive of this week, right? At Maker Faire at the end of the week, it's like the big wave breaking. I guess my question to you guys is, how do we, and you're the experts at building community at one level, how do we capture what happened here and build it out, and build it out at a global scale? We like to think when we live in the Silicon Valley we're in the center of the universe, but we're really not, especially with the Maker Revolution. But how do we get a global community going around this? Because this is the beginning, and there's so many things we're all learning, and we've absolutely got to share it. That's what happened here. I'd love to kick that into gear, the next community.
You know, let me just say it's almost a question, and I think that's going to be our last question for today, but because it's a great question to end on, because we really don't have the answer, but, you know, from Bilal talking about Baghdad, or I was in Kuwait, and you know, these different, Rome, you know, across the world there are places saying, how do we do this? How do we do it? What's the design of this on a global scale? It isn't just us talking to each other. It is that sort of like, how do you organize cities so that they could do this better? Like take an economic zone kind of idea or something. I don't know. I don't have the answers, but I would love to connect and keep in touch with people that do. Maybe this could be part of the enterprise of this conference going forward, is really looking at those kinds of ideas, because we've kind of covered a lot of what we've done in the past and why we're here kind of things. The really interesting thing is what can we do to affect more people's lives and on a global scale. So let me end with that, and thank you all for being here. I share Tim's sentiment that this is in a way a historic meeting. I'm so glad we were able to have it here and not just in a hotel. We say, well, where do we? No, we've been at Xerox Park, you know, a place of laser printers, desktop interfaces, you know,
the mouse,
the mouse, all this stuff. You know, we hatched some really good ideas here. As Eric said, Maker Faire is really where I think we begin to see the whole community participating, and we have just sort of tremendous enthusiasm and interest. And I think each of you is a leader in all of this. So to be able to go out,
that leader thing. One of the things that I think we did so successfully with the open source movement and with Web 2.0, we made heroes of people who were previously relatively unknown. And I was struck by a number of speakers said, wow, so many of my heroes are here in the room. And part of the job that we're trying to do now is to make those people heroes outside of this room. Because once you create heroes, you know, these are heroes for kids to look up to. These are heroes for VCs to go, holy crap, I'm missing the boat. These are heroes for entrepreneurs to want to emulate. You know, that starts, you know, that's just super effective marketing. And I think that's really, you know, part of, you know, when you start that stone rolling downhill, it starts to gather a lot more than moss.
Good. Thank you, Tim. So we'll bring this to a close. Remember to get your packet on the way out, or your bag with a couple of things in there. And really would love to hear from you. I would love ideas from anyone here, practically. Like, is it online community? Is it mailing list? What is it practically to try to, you know, you've been to every conference, they always promise to keep in touch afterwards, and they never do. So we may just go down that same road. But there's something compelling about bringing everybody together, and I think this wants to kind of happen elsewhere.
Brad will wrap your software all in plastic, and then we'll have the new future of human-computer interaction.
So I hope to see you all at Maker Faire. If you're available tomorrow, come by for Education Day. You'll see some amazing kids. So thanks a lot.